All right, everybody. Thank you for coming to today's live training about how to get started lifting weights. Now, this is a big topic that I could go into all sorts of theory and tangents, but my goal today is to give you specific nuts and bolts, right? Specific actions and strategies for what I think are the most important aspects of lifting for novices, for beginners. And if you don't think you're a beginner because you've been going to the gym for many years, watch through the training. And then if there's any piece of this missing from the way you train today, you're a beginner. So that's the theory I'm going to go with. And beginners have a lot of potential ahead of them to get strong, build muscle, improve body composition, improve health. What I want to start with is this statement at the top. Hopefully you guys can see the whiteboard okay. Build strength, muscle will follow. Okay, build strength, muscle will follow. What I see a lot is people get overwhelmed with the amount of programs, all the equipment you can use. You go to the gym and there's a million machines and they don't know what to do. And then they say, well, this influencer or this person I appreciate and follow on social media, she looks great. She's toned. She's got the physique I want or the health I want. I'm going to do what she's doing. The problem is she has spent potentially years getting to that point, and what she's doing does not make sense for a beginner. So we're going to use this principle throughout in that our goal is to get stronger. And by getting stronger and more capable and using our full system, our human system, naturally, we will develop muscle mass and all the benefits that come with that. The capability, the health, the ability to burn more fat, and the joint health and so on. Okay, so we're going to start with that principle. The other principle I want to mention is this is really about training. Okay, and here, I don't know if you can read this, but it says training equals skill. It is not exercise. Okay, there are lots of things in life we do for fun, right? Going out for a bike ride, you might do that for fun. But when we talk about getting stronger, building muscle effectively, and we don't want to be wasting our time doing this unless we really just enjoy it for its own sake, we want to train, right? We want to develop skill over time. It's like playing an instrument or getting good at, Microsoft Excel or whatever hobby or skill that you've worked at for years. It's really a matter of practice and improvement over time. So if you feel right now frustrated because you haven't gotten stronger, you haven't developed muscle, right? You feel like going to the gym is a chore. There's no intrinsic joy from going to the gym. I was just talking to Becky, one of our attendees today, former client, and before the call, and she said how like just going to the gym is now becoming a habit, a routine, right? And that's what we want it to be. If you haven't experienced all of that, chances are you are not developing the skill and progressing over time, because most people will start to enjoy it as that happens. So we're going to talk about how to do that today. First things first, how do we get started? All right. I want to address things like schedule, equipment, programming, and then I'm going to tie them into some basic principles. All right. So schedule wise, I highly recommend if you're a beginner, you carve out 3 days a week. Just keep it simple. 3 days a week, full body is ideal. Why? Because as a beginner, you have the ability to work out all your muscle groups within less than an hour, because the weights are not that heavy. And when we talk about programming, you'll see we're not doing 7 different exercises in a workout. We're doing 3, right? The weights aren't that heavy. And then within less than 48 hours, sometimes as little as 24 hours, you can fully recover and do it again. If you go and, pick out that program that you follow online, that influencer follows, 4 day, who does a 4-day split, right? They might do upper, lower. They might do bench press, squat, overhead press, deadlift, and then they'll repeat the next week. Well, when you think about that, what's happening? You squat on Tuesday, you don't do it again to the next Tuesday. Well, as a beginner, you need more frequency than that. You need to be squatting pretty much every session when you first start, because your body can, and that will cause the stimulus and adaptation you need to lift heavier and heavier and heavier each time. And it all comes back to training as a skill and building strength over time. So 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Now here's where I'm going to put on my little no excuses hat. And I'm going to say that there are many points of what I'm going to say today where you might have an excuse. And this group, this training, us here, we're about action and implementation. So I want you to get creative, and I want you to think about how to to break down the roadblocks, how to break down the barriers. So if you tell me I can't work out 3 days a week because of my schedule, I'm going to say, do a time audit of your schedule. Look at how much screen time you have on your phone. Look how much time you stream Netflix. Look how much time you spend commuting, and look how much time you do other things that are less valuable than your health. Second, if you say that the gym is too far away, okay, really strongly consider a home gym. I'm sorry to say it, but most people have some sort of space for a home gym. And if you don't, I get it, okay? But we're talking about making an investment in your health. And if you have the room or you can carve it out in your house, a home gym is going to solve a lot of other problems like the commute, the convenience, the gym culture, all these things that are problems for some people. So that's my diatribe, and it kind of applies to everything in that we don't want to make excuses. We want to figure out how to do it, because this is the most effective and quick way to build strength that I'm talking about today. Okay, so that's schedule. And by the way, if you have questions as we go, put them in the chat in text, and then when we're all done, we'll open it up and answer those. The next thing is equipment. Okay, so humans are really good at inventing tools. Over time, we figure out that certain things are more efficient for the job, the hammer to a nail, right? The most effective tool we found to load up your body with natural movement is the barbell. Now, yes, there are bands. Yes, there are dumbbells. Yes, there are machines. But the barbell is a balanced, stable tool that allows you to lift extremely heavy weight, the heaviest weight possible of any of those tools, do it safely, right, with the right equipment, and actually make progress for what we're intending. Now, let me quickly address the alternatives, right? Dumbbells. Dumbbells are going to be the next best alternative. I've had clients start with dumbbells because of a lack of access to the gym, or they have a home gym and they don't have a barbell and rack. And you can do that. The problem with dumbbells is a few things. Number one, you'd have to have a whole string of all the dumbbells to actually progress in weight. And even then, when you're going from 10 to 15 to 20, the jumps are too big. And now you need to get micro plates and things like that. The second thing is, as dumbbells get heavy, they get very unwieldy, and you have to like muscle them into place. And that actually can cause injury and stress on other joints that you don't intend to use. The third thing is, almost invariably, when I see people trying to replicate the main barbell movements with dumbbells, their form is not great at all. And it's actually very hard to get good form with dumbbells. It's quite a bit easier with barbells. It takes a little bit of learning and skill, but so does it with dumbbells. And with barbells, you can be consistent over time and lift a lot of weight. The other alternatives are bands and machines. So when I say machines, I'm talking about cable machines. I totally am against using the big box gym like machines where you're stuck in a fixed range of motion. There may be one or two of those in existence that offers much value. Most of them are not going to be worthwhile compared to free weights. But cables can be a good alternative if you don't have another choice. For example, a lat pull down machine is a good choice when you get to the point where you want to learn pull-ups and chin-ups, but you're not strong enough to do it, for example. Bands are good for rehab. They're good for working up to something that you're very weak in. For example, I just mentioned chin-ups and pull-ups. A band is a good way to use with a pull-up bar to work up to it. They're also good for, let's say you can't squat to depth and you're really weak with your squat. Instead of like squatting to a box, which is one way I would do it, you can take a band and stretch it across a power rack and then do the squat. But you're still doing a squat with a barbell. So my point is, I would not recommend using bands for the main movements unless it's your only option, right? And again, we're talking about breaking down excuses. If you are rehabbing, if you're recovering from injury, if your doctor has said not to load a certain weight, then bands could be an option. Okay, so the barbell is the most effective tool. Now, what does that look like? A barbell is typically a 7 foot long, 6 or 7 foot long, 45-pound bar. Some are lighter, like for women's barbells, or they even have very light 15-pound barbells. The standard is 45 pounds, which is 20 kilos, and it's loadable with Olympic-sized plates, which are just plates that have a 2-inch hole, not the ones with the little 1-inch hole, but the 2-inch. In addition to this, you just need 2 other things. You need a rack to put the barbell in, and you need a bench to do bench presses. That's the minimum equipment. You could probably invest a couple grand at home and have an entire setup that would last you for the next 2 years. And the stuff will last you for the rest of your life. I'm just saying, before you outgrow it in strength. Most gyms do have barbells and racks these days, but some don't. So again, you're going to have to look around. And as part of today's training, I really want you to be taking notes and thinking about each of these things, how you're going to plan them in and take action. So 3 days a week program using barbells. That is the premise. The next thing is, we were also talking before the training about meal planning and workout planning, and how there's some similarities in that. If we want to take control of what happens to us, we want to plan ahead. Same thing with food, same thing with nutrition. If we know there's a party coming up, we plan ahead, so that we don't just randomly make emotional decisions in the moment. Most people go to the gym and they exercise. You know, they're like, oh, what am I going to do today? Upper body. Okay, I'm going to use this machine, this machine, this machine. I'm going to get a sweat. I'm going to get a good sweat. Maybe I'm going to get sore, you know, chase the pump. Maybe I'm in a group class. You guys have all been there, right? I've been there too. I did CrossFit. I would put that in that category. But we don't want to do exercise, right? We want to do training. And to do training, you have to have a plan. And you have to have a plan that improves over time. So having a notebook or having an app where you can identify the exercises, not exercise, but the movements, the exercises, the sets, the reps, and the weight ahead of time, and have your plan, is going to be very helpful. Because then think about it. On Sunday, you've got your workout, you set up your gym bag, you've got your blender bottle, maybe you've got your shoes and your weightlifting belt, and now you're good to go. No excuses on Monday, right? And you know whether you succeed or fail against your plan. Because if we're going to improve against a skill, we have to challenge ourselves and we have to measure ourselves. And once we know that we can or can't, but we attempted, we know what we have to do next time to make adjustments and keep moving forward. Okay, so these are like the basics of getting ready, mentally ready, and preparing and knowing what we're going to have access to. Now let's talk about the principles of the program itself. What do you look for in a program? What kind of movements do we do? And really, what are we trying to get out of this? How are we increasing the skill of strength so that we can get all the benefits that strength gives us? So I'm going to start talking about, let's see how I want to do this. I'm going to start talking about the lifts first. Okay. Yeah, that is where I want to start. So what I have here in blue is what I call the big six. Okay. You may have heard of the big three: squat, deadlift, bench press in powerlifting. You may have heard of the big four, where you add in overhead press. And then I like to add in two others that come in to your programming pretty early on, once you get past the initial few months. And that would be some sort of pull and row. Now, why do we do these movements? Okay, why do we do these movements? It comes down to principles. We want to get stronger as a human being on Earth. And a human being on Earth moves. And we don't move this way, okay? We move this way, right? We don't isolate our muscles and our joints in fixed range of motions. We use a full range of motion. We use multiple muscles and muscle groups when we move. And there are basically six movements that we do that can be associated with these six exercises, okay? We squat, right? You watch a baby or an infant, they're really good at squatting perfectly. We pick things up, okay? So that would be a deadlift, something that's dead on the ground, you pick it up. Bench press is pushing away from you horizontally, okay? We do it laying down just because it's an effective way to do it with a barbell. But you could do it this way if there was a good, way to do that. Overhead press is pushing away from you vertically, right? And then pulling vertically and pulling horizontally. If you think about anything you do in life, it's going to involve one of those movements. And every single one of those uses multiple muscles, some of them across your body, right? Squats and deadlift use your legs and your back. Your back is an isometric stabilizer, and then your legs hinge and muscles come into play. So just like a barbell is an efficient tool, these lifts are efficient tools. All right. And they work multiple joints. They're natural, full range of motion, and they use the most muscle mass in the least amount of time. So for those of you who are busy, who are like, I feel overwhelmed. I feel like I'm working out too much. I feel like there's just too much. This is actually the lazy person's route to getting super strong and more muscle. Okay, I'm as lazy as they come. Just checking out I'm as lazy as they come. And I used to do CrossFit like 4 or 5 days a week. I used to run, I used to this, that. Now I just train 3 or 4 days a week for like an hour. Maybe it's an hour and a half for me at this point. And with a lot of rest period, I don't sweat too much. I don't get too sore, and I get stronger and stronger over time. So that sounds attractive to you. If that sounds efficient and time saving to you, this is the way to go. Okay. So those are the movements. Now let's talk about how to take those movements, those very efficient movements that use a lot of muscle, and put them in the context of developing the skill over time to get strong. Okay. I've got 2 things that I'm kind of showing here. The first is about how to do the movements efficiently. I'm going to get that out of the way right now, but then I want to move into the principles, which I think is the meat of the program. Okay. I don't know if you can see this little guy. I drew a person here doing a squat, and I have a dotted line that goes from the barbell on his or her, not neck, but down at the meaty part of the shoulders. This is the low bar squat. And you can see that the vertical path from there to the middle of his foot. So this principle of bar path is important to know when you do each of the lifts. And I'm going to show you a book that tells you all this as part of the program. But when you do the squat or deadlift or overhead press, the bar has to have a vertical path. If it doesn't, so if you film yourself squatting from the side and the bar is doing this, right, or this, or just something other than vertical, maybe it's going like this or this, right there off top, right there, you can see that your form is not what it needs to be. So when we're talking about form and technique, being efficient with these movements is going to be important early on when you're a beginner. Okay. And that's why I think when you start any program, don't just dive in and start to increase the weight session after session without fixing your form first. But also don't use form as an excuse to stay at the same weight for weeks or months. Right. And I've seen it go both ways where people are like, well, I'm just working my form and technique. Well, how long have you been doing that? Well, for like 2 months, 3 months, I still haven't nailed it. Well, come on. No. Okay. You kind of learn as you go. And because you're pretty weak when you start, let's just be honest, you're not that strong, you're not carrying a lot of weight. You have a lot of tolerance for doing things a little bit wonky as you figure it out. And so what I want to mention here is when you get started with a lifting program, if you're going to do this, figure out how you're going to get feedback and improve. Okay. One way to do that is to take video of yourself and compare it to videos you see online, right? Or pictures or whatever. Another is to join a community where they can give you a form check, right? So I'm in a barbell club. It's Andy Baker's Barbell Club. Andy Baker is one of the best programmers ever. He co-wrote Practical Programming, which is the sequel to Starting Strength. And his group, you can post a video of yourself lifting, and then he will tell you what to fix. That's another way. Another way is to have a personal trainer or a coach. Now, not all personal trainers are great. You got to find a good one who understands what they're talking about. And you have to be the one that directs them. Don't let them direct you. In other words, you have to tell them, I'm trying to do this. Here's my program. These are the lifts I want to work on. Now help me, right? As opposed to a personal trainer who's giving you the program and all the other stuff. And so those are the options that I would consider if I were you in trying to improve your form as you go along. So enough about that. Let's get into principles. All right. You guys heard the term newbie gains, right? When you are a novice and you haven't trained like this before, I'm jealous of you because you have so much potential to gain significant strength and muscle within just 2 or 3 months. We're talking double. No problem. Most people can double their strength, meaning whatever they lift on day 1 or day 2, it's going to be double that by month 2, 3. Okay. And if that sounds shocking to you, it's because you haven't been doing this way. And when you do, and you start to see those gains come, you'll be like, this is what I've been looking for. This is amazing. And now I actually love lifting. And that's where I want to get you guys. Okay. And I wasn't in love with lifting for years. I really hated it, to be honest, until I finally figured this out. Okay. So newbie gains, what are they? All right. when you first start lifting the right way, and you're going to go up in weight each session, we're going to talk about that. Your body is just learning the movement. You're clumsy, your form's all over the place, you're not stable, right? You might even drop a bar or something, right? Like, or lean and the plate falls off. Okay, if you can relate to any of this, right, just laugh silently in your head. And so your body's learning all this, but like any skill, within the first few sessions, you start to go up the learning curve really quickly, right? And you start to become pretty skilled at just the basics, even though you have some things to fix. That's called neuromuscular adaptation, right? Or neuromuscular efficiency. You are becoming more efficient with the link between your brain and your body, right? This is the mind-muscle connection you've sometimes heard, or the mind-body connection, a very real physiological thing. And if you've ever learned a skill of any kind that involves your hands, I don't care if it's knitting, playing an instrument, anything, you know what I mean. It eventually becomes kind of automatic. Okay, so in the first, I'll say 2 months, 3 months maybe of lifting, you develop this neuromuscular adaptation. And so the way I like to think of it is, you've got all these wonderful muscle fibers in your body that you don't really use very often, right? You pick up a cup to drink, right? You might pick up your kid, you might pick up some heavy groceries, or you might help somebody move, but that's about the extent of it, unless you're really lifting heavy like this. And so you've got all this untapped reserve. When you start lifting, you start to make these neural connections that use more and more of those muscle fibers, bigger and bigger and bigger muscle fibers that are kind of deep in there, just sitting around waiting to be used. And if you don't use them as you get older, they tend to atrophy and fall away. Okay. Whole other topic about why our metabolism goes down and why you'll get fatter as we get older and things like that. So as your body learns to use those muscles, you get what looks like strength. It really is. You're able to produce more force very quickly, and you may not actually be building too much muscle yet, because your body's just tapping into the muscle that's already there. But then at some point, it's going to hit that threshold where your body now realizes that you've hit the limit of everything you have to offer, and it says, oh no, all right, I need to rebuild some more of that wonderful, useful muscle tissue that you're asking me to use all the time. And so as you sleep and as you eat your protein and your calories, because we're going to eat food, right? It's going to build more tissue. And that's where the magic starts to happen around month 2 or 3. Some people see it earlier, where you start to see the physical manifestation. And almost invariably within 3 months of starting a program like this, your physique has changed quite a bit. You may have a layer of fat on top of that. We all get that. Okay. That's that we can work on with nutrition. But you will be burning fat and increasing muscle at the same time if you're a newbie, almost invariably, which means you don't necessarily have to gain weight, and you also shouldn't be dieting when you're doing this. We'll talk about nutrition in a little bit. So your physique will improve, you'll get stronger, and that's a beautiful thing. Those are newbie gains, okay? Now, so hopefully this is all clear and I'm not rambling all over the place, but how do we actually make this happen? Okay, and this is where the principle of progressive overload comes into play. You might have heard this term. It gets thrown around a lot. It gets thrown around a lot inaccurately. The way I like to explain it is that you are simply loading your body to the limit of its capability, and just to the limit and no more, so that your body expands its potential just a bit for next time, so that you can handle that load. But then the next time you go in, you're going to give it a little more than that. And you're just going to keep pushing and pushing and stressing and stressing. And these acute stressors cause your body to keep adapting and building more muscle, right? That's progressive overload. It's not that you are overloading your muscle beyond their capability. It's that you're loading them right to the limit, and now your capability expands. And if you think about that, that's how all skills work, right? Even mental skills in life. When you take action and you push yourself to your limit of skill with a challenge, your body will adapt and increase your skill. So that's really what we're trying to do. I hope this all resonates with you. Okay, so that's progressive overload. Now, how do we make it happen in real life? Okay, in the gym, we're going to be doing barbell lifts, right? Because they're efficient, because they use all your muscle mass, because they're natural range of motion, natural full range of motion. And we have 2 variables that we can change. One is intensity and one is volume. Intensity is not sweating and getting your heart rate up. Intensity is the weight on the bar. That's all it is. So if you have a 45-pound bar and two 25-pound plates on it, that's 95 pounds. That's your intensity, 95 pounds. Whether you do it once or you do it 50 times, that's your intensity. The other variable is volume, which is the sets and the reps at that intensity. Okay. So what we found is that there's a sweet spot. Let's take the extremes. If you did just one rep, and I said lift the heaviest thing you could possibly lift for one rep, maybe you could lift 135 pounds and then you're wiped, right? Now, maybe you could rest 5 or 6 minutes and do it again one time, but that's basically the limit of your strength, that one rep. The problem with that is you can't do very many. So you may not actually give your body the stimulus it needs to grow to the next session. The other extreme is 10, 15, 20 reps. So again, if 135 was your max, if you want to do 15 or 20, you might end up doing 65 pounds. Okay. Well, the problem with that is the intensity is not high enough. And again, you're not going to have the stimulus you need for adaptation going into the next session. So 5 reps we found, we meaning the lifting community and coaches and researchers and everyone over the years, 5 is kind of the sweet spot between volume and intensity, because now you can lift about 80–85% of your max. So if your max was 135 pounds, maybe you can lift what, like 105 pounds, and you can do it for 5 and it'll feel really hard. And then you can rest about 5 minutes, do it again, and then maybe do it one more time. So you can probably do that about 3 or 4 sets. There are some programs that have 5 sets where you've heard of a 5x5 program. I think that's just way too much, because you're going to start plateauing really early in the program when you're trying to do that much volume. So I like 3 sets of 5, just like in the starting strength program that I'm going to talk about. But 5 reps is ideal. So now, okay, we have the idea of progressive overload and the number of reps at five reps. What are we going to do with that information? Well, we're going to combine a few of these movements every workout. We're going to do them for a certain amount of sets of 5. Okay. And then next time we're going to do it again, but heavier. That's it. Like that is a good novice lifting program in a nutshell, is sets of 5, full body, go heavier next time. And I know it's simple, but not easy, right? But that's the principle of it. So is that what you're doing right now? And I'm guessing you're not, right? Are you doing the same weight every time in the gym? Are you doing sets of 10 to 15, right? Hypertrophy? Are you doing things that are not this? Because if you are, doing this is going to be more effective. Okay, so that's the basics of it. And then you have to consider things like recovery. And I've separated it into 2 types of recovery. This is totally my term. I just made it up. One is micro recovery and one is macro recovery. All right, by micro recovery, and let me know if you can't hear me in the chat, but I guess you can because nobody has complained. Micro recovery is how you recover within the workout. Macro recovery is between workouts. So the 2 things that I care about during a workout are going to be warm-ups and rest periods. Why do I call warm-ups part of your recovery? Because they prime the pump, they increase the blood flow, and they neuromuscular, or they train your brain to do the form before you actually get to the working weight. And that then allows you to do it safely, reduces injury, allows you to fully lift what you need to lift, and then recover later on. So I kind of consider it like a form of pre-recovery. So warm-ups. What do you need to do for warm-ups? Very simply, just do the lift. So if your first lift is squat. Start with an empty bar, then add a little bit of weight, then add a little bit more weight. There's a system we can use, like with percentages, that can overcomplicate it, but it basically looks like this. If you're going to squat 135 pounds, you might warm up on 45 for 5, then go to 65 for 3, then 95 for 2, then 105 for 1 or 2, and then you're going to be ready to do your working weight. Pretty simple, right? I just started light, increased the weights, I jumped, I lowered the reps as I got there, and then did my working weight. Simple. You don't need dynamic workout warm-ups. You don't need stretching. In fact, I advise against stretching generally, because stretching can make you almost over flexible for the movement and fatigue the muscle. You're going to get a stretch through the workout. But again, it's your personal circumstance if you have like a specific rehab thing you're doing. Okay, getting off track, but that's how you do the warm up. If it's cold, like here in the Northeast, I work out in my home gym. It could be like, 55, 60 in the morning, maybe. I will jump on a bike for 2 minutes, warm myself up, and that's it. And then I'll get into the movement. So warm-ups. Rest periods are the other one that people screw up all the time because most people rest way too short, or I guess they're resting the right amount of time when they're doing the endurance workouts. But for this kind of workout, we want to rest anywhere from 3 to 6 or 7 minutes between each set. So if you're doing a set of 5 and you have to do 3 sets of 5 squats, you're going to warm up. Then you're going to do your first set. Then you're going to rest 3 to 5 minutes. It's going to seem like you're doing nothing. It's going to seem like, am I actually working out? Like it's a very different thought. And that's a good time to get some steps in, actually, in the gym, in your home. Or yeah, you can check email and stuff like that. Just don't get distracted where you forget to do the next step. So rest periods are really important because the goal here is not to sweat or increase our heart rate. The goal is to get all the reps so we get enough volume and stimulus to grow and increase our skill of strength. Always coming back to that. So if you squat and it's really heavy and you just finished your 5th rep and you're like, man, that was tough. If you rest 30 seconds or 60 seconds and try it again, you're not going to get it. You're not going to get the reps. But if you rest 4 minutes, the heart rate's back to normal, your muscles have calmed down, you're not fatigued to the point of failure, and you can do your next set. Okay. That's micro recovery. Then we talk about macro recovery, nutrition and sleep. Now, to me, nutrition is a lot of things. It's how many calories you eat. It's having enough protein. It's all the other things I talk about a lot in other training. But if you were to break it down to be very simple, I would say if you're going to start a training program like this, I would not be dieting initially. I would just eat at your maintenance calories or more. Like you can be in a slight surplus and you'll get even more benefit at the risk of gaining a tiny bit of weight, but you'll gain a lot of muscle, right? And that's what we're trying to do. So nutrition, calories at maintenance or higher, and then protein is your typical recommendation of up to about 1 gram per pound of body weight. Or for metric, that would be 2.2 grams per kilogram. Okay, so if you weigh 150 pounds, you're aiming for somewhere between 120 and 150 grams of protein, and the rest from fats and carbs. And that's it. To keep it really simple, that's it. And that will allow you to have all the resources you need to recover from session to session and maximize your lifting. Sleep is the other big one. I mean, sleep could be the biggest one of all. People who get 6 hours of sleep really suffer when they try to do this because your body needs that sleep. And by the way, if you're worried about fat loss, if you're trying to get leaner as part of this whole process, sleep is going to help with hunger, and it's going to help with nutrient partitioning and where the fat gets stored. So studies have demonstrated time and again that people who are sleep restricted store more of their fat viscerally in their belly area. Okay, like if you take 2 groups that gain the same amount of weight, the same amount of fat, the ones that have less sleep store it in their belly, the ones that get enough sleep store it more evenly, more subcutaneously and more evenly. So sleep is really important. Okay, what have I not covered? I think I covered the basics. What I wanted to do was let me see here. Bar paths, efficiency. We talked about getting feedback. Okay, so what I want to do here is I'm going to share my screen and show you just an example program that helped me and a lot of other people. Keep in mind that I am not a personal trainer. Personal trainers usually help you with your form in person, and they also can write your programming. Okay. I'm okay with templates for a program if you follow the other things that I just talked about, of being in control of, using the right movements, following these principles, and getting feedback for your form and technique. One little thing I didn't mention is when you're working out from home or even in the gym and you don't have a spotter, a training partner, for safety, you've got to have pins or spotter arms. So when you squat, you want the rods, the pins that go in the rack or spotter arms to be right where you can gently unload the bar forward onto those pins if you fail. When you bench, you want the pins to be between your chest and your neck. So it's kind of be right there where you can do your bench, but then if you fail, you can put it onto the bar. Okay, that's the only other thing I wanted to mention. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen. And again, if you have questions, put them in the chat. All right, so I mentioned this a few times, but the starting strength program it should be in everyone's library, even if you're not going to follow the exact program. Okay, this is one of the few resources in the world that it's going to teach you so much, and it's going to open your eyes and elevate everything you ever knew about working with barbells and just training in general for strength. I recommend getting the physical book because it has a lot of information about how to do these lifts the right way. And it talks about strength, the physics behind it, the mental side, everything. Okay. So you can get that on Amazon or at their website. And if you want to take a quick gander at their program, just so you can see what I'm talking about here, if you follow the starting strength program, it's as bare bones as it gets. You're basically going to do 3 sets of 5 squats, 3 sets of 5 press or bench press, alternating back and forth, and 1 set of 5 deadlifts. I mean, super simple. I don't know if you still see me on the video, but squat, press, deadlift, squat, bench, deadlift, squat, press, deadlift, alternate, repeat. That's the very basics. And you notice that squat and pressing is 3 sets of 5. Deadlift is 1 set of 5 because it's the heaviest lift. It can cause a lot of lower back fatigue if you do too much volume. So 1 set of 5 is enough. As you progress and you're like 2 months in, you start to get a little more fancy. You maybe replace the deadlifts with some pull-ups or chin-ups. And again, if you're not strong enough for those, you can use a band. There's all sorts of ways to not make excuses, but work up to it. And then as you get more and more advanced, and you're like 3, 4, 5, 6 months into the program, you may add some accessory movements, and eventually you're ready for intermediate programming. But we're not talking about that today. We're talking about just building that base of strength. And then Becky said, I follow Mike Matthews' program, Thinner, Leaner, Stronger, and have a trainer. Yeah. And Becky, you started with dumbbells when we started working together. And with dumbbells, you did some basic, it wasn't exactly this, but it was some more appropriate movements with dumbbells that built a base of strength. And then now you're using more of an intermediate program, right? So cool. I mean, and that's fine. And if you're able to progress over time, if your body responds and you're squatting once a week, let's say, and each time it can go up, you are still getting stronger, right? It's not like a one size fits all. And then the other thing I want to mention is Barbell Logic was a company that was an offshoot of Starting Strength. And they have an awesome YouTube site with form videos. So for example, if you go to how to squat, it's 6 minutes long, but it's gold. Like they go over everything about form, and you're going to find that if you've ever squatted before, it's probably very different from this. I mean, they cover how to do it without a bar, how to use your grip, and then how to actually unrack it and do the movement. Right. So I highly recommend those resources. Okay. And I think that's it. I hope there isn't anything big I didn't cover, but with that, I'm just going to open it up. If you guys have questions live, throw them out there for me. I'm looking at the chat. This training's been great for my trainers taught me. Good. Yeah. Yeah, you need to be educated. You have to be educated because there are a lot of bad trainers out there. So if you're educated, you can immediately get an instinct of like, this trainer's not quite doing what I expect. Also, look, you guys are in the Wits and Weights community, right? We have a lot of great lifters in the community. And we can do form checks too. If you want to throw a video of yourself lifting, and I know it might sound embarrassing, but honestly, we're all here to help. It's a safe environment. You can put a video of yourself and we will jump in. If you're a client of mine, of course, I do that for you already anyway. Carol said I love the
Wits and Weights community. I mean, I feel I'll ask any question, I get answers.
Yeah.
And, I'm not, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm also part of the Thinner, Leaner, Stronger Facebook group as well.
Sure.
I don't know if Carol, if you're in that, but that's good too, because you got other women talk, I said, talking about what they do or asking questions or suggesting things, and you learn that way as well.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of community. Didn't used to be, I used to be quite a loner, and now I realize how valuable other people are, right? And be in as many communities as you can if you think they're going to help. In Wits and Weights, we just recently started, two things, right? The Ask Philip thread, hashtag Ask Philip, which is every Friday. If you post a comment there specific to your situation, I'm going to answer it live on Friday, and then you'll have it in a recording. Also, the group can help. So if you just say, hey, I'm having trouble squatting, I can't get to depth, my hip flexors are tight, blah, blah, blah. Here's exactly what's happening with me right now. I guarantee you'll get an answer. And if you don't get an answer from somebody in the group, I will answer. You will get an answer. So,
yeah.
All right. Any other questions? A bunch of folks on the call. Would love to hear your voice, or at least throw it in the chat if there's something else you want to ask about. I mean, sometimes people find this shocking in some way, or I might come across as like, this is the only way to do it. There are some principles at play here though. So did anything resonate with you? Is there anything you want to challenge me on? Is there anything you have questions on that I covered or maybe didn't cover that we can address right now?
See, on my barbell squats, I'm still at only bar plus 5 or 10 because of form. Because I tend to, I'm still trying a little bit instability with the bar, but we're getting there. So.
And I love that instability with the bar. Perfect. Guess what? You would never experience instability if you were using a Smith machine, or if you were using like a cable machine, like a machine. You wouldn't experience it because you don't need it in those. Now you need to be stable, and you need to develop that, and it's forcing you to do that as a system.
Mm-hmm.
Like that. That's a good thing. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm having to watch myself now. I've also, when I squat, I tend my knees would go in. So I use a what's it called? I couldn't think of the word. And do squatting to keep
you keep the band tight. And you keep the band tight.
Yes. I do squatting at home just to kind of teach myself. Yes. Teach for my knees to go out and not go in.
Yeah, there are so many little techniques like that. Another technique that's a really good one, because that's like immediate feedback if you're caving. And caving is very common. I've actually seen it more generally in women than men for whatever reason. Like statistically that happens, but caving is a little bit of it's okay when you're lifting really heavy and you're really good at squatting, and then like you're just trying to push up at the you'll see that, but not as a matter of course. The other thing is you could put what Starting Strength calls a terribly useful block of wood. Literally just put like a 4x4 or 2x4 is going to fall over, but like a 4x4 piece of wood that's like 2 or 3 feet high, right in front of where you would knock it over if your knee went too far forward. Because that's the other problem people have, is the knees go way too far over the toes. And, we want kind of a 10-degree angle on our feet. And then we want to our knees have to follow our feet angle. We don't want them caving, like you said, and we don't want them going forward, right? We want to sit back into it, keep the bar path vertical, follow out. Anyway, I'm not going to teach squat form here because there's a million cues for everybody. This is a really important concept. If you just video yourself from the side.
I might do that. Yeah.
Video yourself from your side and look at the plate. You'll see the plate. And if it goes like this or this, you're doing something off. There's even apps that will track a line on your video. Like you upload the video and it'll show you the bar path. Yeah.
That's cool.
Pretty cool. The only one that doesn't have a vertical bar path is what? Anybody know? Which one of these 4 movements does not have a vertical bar path? So this is like pop quiz time. Squat, deadlift, bench press, overhead.
Deadlift.
No,
I'm guessing deadlift.
No, it's not the deadlift.
Oh,
my guess is the overhead.
Not the overhead.
All right. Bench press. The bench press.
Bench press. The bench press has a slightly diagonal bar path.
Really?
When you're laying down. It's the only one that's weird like that. But deadlift should be vertical. And this is why the biggest problem with deadlift for most people is the bar is too far away from their legs, right? You want to start with the bar an inch from your shins, and then you touch them to your shin as you're about to pull, and it should touch your body the whole way up and down. Like if you're wearing shorts, it should like raise your shorts up. Pretty much.
Well, my problem is sometimes I have to watch sometimes I don't, my knees bend too much. She's like, just hinge them, not bend them, like you're talking about.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Everything you've said, which I trust everything you say, she's been saying. So I feel like I really got a good trainer.
Yep.
And
Good.
Of course, she's a trainer at my gym. So
yep.
I got
definitely encourage anybody to get either a trainer. And if you, if you can't afford like a regular trainer, go once or twice to a good trainer,
I feel like she's really good. So
yeah.
That's great, Becky.
Anything
Carol,
else?
Carol, you part of the TLS Facebook group?
Oh, yeah, actually I am. Yeah, I am on there.
Cool. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Any other questions about lifting? Was this what you expected? Was it not what you expected? I know I had some questions ahead of time about, like, again, alternatives like bands and everything else. It's going to come down to you as an individual, what your limitations are, what your capabilities are. But a lot of times we also make excuses. I just have to put it that way. Like, even when you have an injury history or something, we sometimes make excuses that we can't do barbells. And oftentimes barbells are a very safe, efficient way to do it. It's just you start light. You start very light. You do the full range, and you make sure you can do the full range, and then you start adding weight. And there you go. Great information. Thank you. Yeah, I'm glad, Laura, that you found it helpful. I did have a few other questions in my back pocket here, just real quickly to answer that often come up. So we talked about mobility issues, discomfort, whatever. And you definitely have to listen to your body. You definitely don't want to do something that causes pain. Just today, I was helping a client who is just learning to squat, and she had some soreness in her wrist and soreness in her elbows. Very common because of the squat grip. If that happens, there's a form issue, period. But it's a matter of finding that without going so heavy that you just exacerbate those pain points, right? So it's really a fine balance. Free weights, we talked about. Nutrition, I didn't want to get into too much detail here today, but when you are lifting, in addition to the calorie, having enough food to to fuel your performance is really important. In addition to that is having carbs and protein roughly around your workout. So within 2 hours before and after your workout, having carbs and protein. The carbs are going to give you energy, glycogen. Glycogen gets drained as you're lifting really heavy because of the transport of ATP, all this chemical stuff that happens in your body. It's like a fuel tank, and it can drain by something like 40% in a heavy lifting session. So if you ate, you're fine. If you ate the night before and you're training like at 5 a.m., you also may be fine if you're not like super strong. But as you get stronger, you really want to avoid fasted training unless it works for you, is all I'm saying. And then after the workout, you want to restore that with carbs. And in both cases, having protein 4 or 5 times a day, regardless, is good for muscle protein synthesis. It optimizes how often your body converts those amino acids into muscle tissue. Most important is to get enough protein, always. Okay. And then decent home gym, not a lot of plates, but definitely don't need a lot of weight to start. Agree. That's what I love. It's just messy action. Get in there, just simple rack, bar, basic plates, bench. And then hustle, go find used, go to Facebook, Craigslist, like go on Amazon, go Rogue when they have sales, like ask a friend, work with a partner, look at garage sales, look at gym closings. A lot of CrossFit gyms have gone out of business over the last few years, and they're always selling their stuff. So yeah, agree. Good stuff. The other question people ask is when do they start to see physique changes? I think I answered that, like usually it's 1 to 3 months. 1 to 3 months. And of course, if you have excess weight to lose, it's not going to be as visible. But I still have seen many clients who had quite a bit of weight to lose and will start off not in a diet. And for 2 months or so, we'll dial everything in. We'll get into training mode. And you still see a drop in their waist size. You see they're stronger, they have better posture, they're starting to sleep better, and on and on and on. All these other benefits before you even change the weight on the scale. So important and mentally healthy concept to think that way. And when you start lifting, you do everything to help you lift more, and that's empowering. Last thing. and then we'll end here. What if you hit a plateau? That's a question I have, is what if you hit a plateau? So you're going along 2-3 weeks, your form is dialed in, you're doing these 3 sets of 5, and you're on set 2 of your squat, like you get to rep 4 and it just feels so heavy, and you go down, you're like, I just can't get this up, and you fail the bar. 3 things you want to look at before considering it a true failure. Are your rest periods long enough? Because when you started lifting, they might have been 2 or 3 minutes. Now that you're stronger, maybe doubled up in strength, they should be like 4, 5, 6 minutes. Try that out. Because if you could get 1 set, there's a really good chance you should get the 2nd set if the rest period is long enough, unless it was a grind. Okay. So that's rest periods. The second thing is sleep and recovery, right? Again, if you're getting 6 hours of sleep, and if you're dieting, that's going to make a massive difference in your ability to keep getting stronger. In fact, if you are dieting, for a fact, you will plateau. And if you diet long enough, it'll regress. It's just going to happen. So that's number 2. The third thing is, are you increasing the weight by too much? So where I see this a lot is the overhead press is much less strong movement than the squat and deadlift, right? So like if I could deadlift 405, I might be able to press 175, right? It's like less than half. So if I'm going up 5 or 10 pounds on my deadlift, it stands to reason I go up 2.5 or 5 pounds on my press. And if you're even less strong than that, right, you might actually have to use the microplates and go up by 2 pounds. So like a pound on each side, or 1 pound maybe. I mean, the goal is to keep progressing. It'll start to kind of level off. The jumps will level off. And then after maybe 4, 5, 6 months, where you're like, I really have hit a limit, that's when you switch to like a 4-day program where you're doing the big lifts once a week and going up each week instead of once a session and going up each session. Okay, I think we covered a lot. Any last questions before I stop the recording?
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
Philip, hi. I do have a question, and I apologize if you've gone through this already. I'm like multitasking, running errands, trying to listen to this. I don't understand, like, why is it 5 reps? Is that for strength? Because I see a lot of people were doing 8 to 10 reps. What is the difference? Is this just primarily for building strength?
Did you catch when I talked about it the first time on the call? Or
I guess I didn't. I could rewatch it.
no, that's okay. No, it's good, because in case I didn't answer it fully, there's people use terms like strength and hypertrophy. So they'll say, okay, strength is like 1 to 5 or 1 to 6 reps. Hypertrophy is like, 8 to 15 or something like that.
Yeah.
Both ranges can get you stronger if you follow the principles of progressive overload, but you're only going to get more strong, more quickly and more efficiently at a higher intensity and a higher stimulus. So you almost have to take the amount on the bar times the amount of sets and reps to get the overall tonnage. And you can do some little math and see how that averages out. But you tend to be able to get a lot higher intensity at 5 reps. And that gives you the stimulus to cause that adaptation we need from session to session. And as I mentioned at the very beginning, doing that will lead to muscle growth most efficiently. Once you then build that base of strength, now you can add in other accessory movements in the 8 to 10, 10 to 15, 15 to 20 rep range to add extra definition and strengthen up the imbalances in the extra parts of your physique.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for repeating all that again. So I missed that whole part.
No, I explained it in a different way that time. So hopefully I covered the bases. Okay, so that was a lot for 1 hour. I'm going to stop the recording. We have 3 minutes left.